Benji, Ndolo, Founder One, and Tony Gachoka are with us in studio to talk about the events that have been shaping our country this past week, the stories that have been dominating news headlines. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's an early one this week.
It's an early one. We're good on time.
Yes.
To have this discussion. Very important that we analyze and put into perspective some of the stories we've been covering in the past week. And I hope you had a good weekend.
Well, the weekend was actually good until the storm was kicked on the judiciary. Because obviously it was a quiet weekend.
Yes.
Then come Friday, the special gazette notice by His Excellency the President disbanding the Judicial Service Commission. And I know, this week we are going to have a lot of action from the courts.
Yes.
As we speak, Sophie, there is industrial action planned. I don't remember where else in the world I've seen this. Maybe in Latin America, where the judges and the magistrates are not going to turn up to work simply to up the ante. It's actually quite a delicate move. And I would say it's the first time we're going to see a face-off between the judiciary and the executive. And I don't know why the president sought to take this action. I haven't been able to speak to him about it. But it's an action that is fairly dangerous and one that is certainly going to see the judiciary, fight back.
So on this one, he failed.
I spoke to some of the commissioners who obviously, first of all, this tribunal itself has got credibility problems. Because Ringera stood before the Judicial Service Commission himself to apply to be a Supreme Court judge. And they turned him down.
Yes.
If you also remember, the renewal of his term when he was in CASA was also very complicated.
Yes.
So the man on top, and then on top of that, he was among the legal team that actually defended the president's case or was doing the strategy for the president's case during the petition for the presidency. So a lot of people are asking, can he come on the table with clean hands? Would this even be impartial? Secondly, it's in violation of a court order. There was a court order specific against the president from doing or acting against the Judicial Service Commission in existence. And if you look back during President Kibaki's term, President Kibaki actually appointed a Chief Justice and Attorney General, but when the court ruled, he reversed it.
Yes.
We've never actually seen executive power defy the courts directly.
So interesting that you bring out all those, and Benjamin, as you weigh in, the president of course has advisors and people who also advise him on matters constitutionality to always ensure that when he makes decisions and such moves, they are in fact in line with the law. But this move's being criticized, and I am sure you also not in support of such a...
I'm just as surprised at the frequency with which I'm having to agree with Tony Gachoka on very key policy issues.
Yes.
Suffice to say that obviously Uhuru Kenyatta is not Mwai Kibaki. As Tony alludes to, yes, a big mistake. What the president should have done is absolute non-interference with one branch of government. Politically, this is being already discussed as perhaps some pressure coming from the deputy president's side and a result of the huge war that has been ongoing in the so-called Gladys Jolie saga. So really interesting events here that will lead to no less than a constitutional crisis. It's a little ironic. I actually met the Chief Justice on Thursday at a function, and he seems to be putting up a brave face just before this thing happened because, as you can understand, the Chief Justice instantly lost a huge constituency that would be a huge sounding board for him come March 18th or whenever that was, when the 10-minute Supreme Court ruling was made. So you can imagine the former Prime Minister and others would be his biggest advocates, and even having lost that and all the other special circumstances within which everything happened, because it was a very controversial ruling that the other side did not even agree with. Now he's tried to keep a brave face, keep the momentum on judicial transformation framework ongoing, keep the pressure up. But let me say this finally, that if you saw the letter regarding, again, the former chief registrar of the judiciary, the finality in its tone, the fact that it was full consensus, unanimous with all those commissioners, I'm sure there's something there regarding their being removed so that, I guess the whole war on that issue continues.
Yeah, and I think one has to say that this country avoided conflict and the 2007 2008 kind of violence, because many Kenyans had complete confidence in the judiciary.
Right.
And in fact, the pronouncement by the Supreme Court brought a finality to the presidential dispute this time round. And it's very ironical that my very good friend, the president, actually benefited from the confidence of the judiciary and became president effectively through a ruling of the court after the petition was filed by court. Now, to actually be the one who throws the first salvo at the judiciary
to dismantle
it brings two questions. First of all, the argument for the ICC is in real problems, because we always argue that we shouldn't go to the ICC because our judiciary is ready. We have complete confidence in the independence of the judiciary. The judiciary is up to spec. We have a new constitutional order and the rule of law.
But let me stop you. When you talk about dismantling the Judicial Service Commission, this is a probe that has been initiated. And those in support of the president's decision argue that it's really all about them clearing their names, that they were found to have certain issues. If they're cleared, then they're back on. So that why fault a process? Know that they've been fired or they're completely out.
I think the last time we were here, I was talking to you about a rogue president.
Yes.
A rogue parliament. I want to now talk about rogue advisors, because I'm saying to you very simply, there is a court order barring the president from doing anything on the Judicial Service Commission. The only way to vacate that order is to go to the same court for review
and appeal
the decision. Now, I am saying to you that that Gazette notice is a nullity. First of all, I can promise you, Sophie, today, none of those commissioners will sit even for one day. The moment the tribunal, purports to sit, they'll be served with the court order for contempt. And they will be cited for contempt of court. And neither will any of the commissioners attend any of the sittings of this tribunal, simply because they will be saying there's a court order barring them. I can also tell you that I know Senior Counsel Paul Mwite has received instructions, and I'm sure very soon, I think in the course of today or tomorrow, he'll also be before the court, trying to cancel this Gazette issuance. What the president has done is exposed himself to a conflict with the judiciary. How will you win? Who is the arbiter of the Constitution? If you read Article 3 of the Constitution, the president is vested with the power to uphold and protect the Constitution. The issue here we are asking, was it lawful? Was it possible? Did he have the authority and the power to issue the Gazette notice? And in my humble view, given the existence of that court order, I believe the president did not have the power to actually do that Gazette notice. And I'm reminding him about how President Kibaki was humble before the law. And actually, when he was wrong, he retreated. He had gazetted the Attorney General, the DPP, Director of Public Prosecution, Kilkumi. He had gazetted the Chief Justice. But when the court pronounced itself, President Kibaki revoked those nominations and followed the proper process.
He beat a history treat, Sophia. And let me just make a further point. What is even worse is the caliber of the people that the president purports to put to investigate this kind of thing. When you talk about Justice Aaron Ringera, I'm one of the individuals that actually moved to court along with Okia Mtata activist Caroline Mutoko in the media to reverse the illegal decision, the unconstitutional decision by the then President Mwai Kibaki to just return Ringera and through the back door, in violation of the requirements that needed this anti-corruption boss to go through rigorously to be hired again by Kenyans. But also, what is the Aaron Ringera has the single distinction of being a Kenyan earning a very good salary, but his tenure at the anti-corruption body was at best controversial, because what were they able to prosecute for all these many years? And so if you get these kinds of guys who are Jubilee insiders to sit against the Judicial Service Commission, again, it will obviously be seen as an attempt to dismantle the judiciary and ultimately to manage that same judiciary. And as Tony alludes to, it will also raise very serious questions as to the independence of the judiciary and the veracity of it to even try.
What do you see happening in this week? We are Monday. What do we see?
It'll be a stalemate.
Actually, I have an insight. I have an insight to that, Benji. I do know that the magistrates and the judges are meeting on Wednesday.
Yes.
And I have spoken to one of the suspended commissioners. And for purposes of the program, let me not say who. But I know that they will be in this industrial action, for fail of a better word, that the courts and they want to go slow. Judges and magistrates, in order to paralyze the operations of the judiciary and they're not going to take this line down. On the other hand, the Judicial Service Commission is going to court. But I want to say this, Sophie. This is in the context of Parliament fighting the Senate for supremacy battle.
Right.
Already we have central government fighting devolved government, whether it is for resources or whether it is for litigation, or not litigation, but I would say laws or bills. Now you then have got the central government attacking the judiciary. You've got a situation in the country where the constitution is being challenged. And we have a very young government. We are 6 months into the presidency. And I would really urge the president, nothing is irredeemable. It is easy to retreat from this Gazette notice, actually cancel it, and allow the Judicial Service Commission to handle its matters independently through the judicial framework. I think that would be my greatest advice, rather than.
But it's unlikely.
Well,
you never know. He could beat his retreat, but again, you wonder what his motivations are. It's too many things happening at the same time. I think you saw the stinging criticism by the former Prime Minister yesterday. I mean, you know what you would describe as very, 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 very harsh criticism, because it's too many things to be a coincidence. Tomorrow, I think you're aware, the Media Zone Association and media practitioners will be holding demonstrations against that media bill. Interesting that the president returned it, but what was interesting, and I said this on Twitter from day one, was what was actually in the memo that he returned, which is about 32 pages. And he didn't remove a lot of the very punitive measures taken against media houses. For example, if Sophia says something that is maybe controversial or contestable, then your CEO has to be ready with some 20 million shillings just in case. I mean, it's ridiculous. So that plus the attack on NGOs, and then now, of course, an attempt to, own the judiciary in a sense, as well as belittle and punish the opposition. It's too many things in a very short time. It's only 7-8 months, and there's serious suspicions on what exactly is the agenda of this Jubilee administration. Would they be what you would call, if Kenya is the hardware and the leadership is the software, would this be, so to speak, KANU 2.0?
I don't want to watch that linearly in public, but within Jubilee, because Jubilee is larger than those who are making errors, I want to underline that a lot of the people who are Jubilee supporters or Jubilee members are upright and law-abiding and actually see where a problem is arising. Because a lot of people are actually asking, is the president governing? The people who know the president well actually are surprised at some of the things that are being done. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a hidden hand behind this signature to this Gazette notice. It is not in his character or style. And as Benji alluded to, there could be some pressure from quarters that supported this government to come into power. Some things which have been done are not being done properly. I want to talk about this because if you look at the media bill, my worry with it is three things. First of all, the unconstitutionality. Again, I come back to the breach of the Constitution. Section 33, Section 34. In the memorandum that the President sent back to Parliament, they are still infringing on the right of individuals to express themselves as guaranteed, and the media to self-regulate.
But it's not unexpected, because we'd seen him already talking after Westgate a lot about the media being responsible. He'd already really come out
the media
strong.
was responsible.
But my point is, his opinion he should have it. But my point is, you cannot act contrary to the Constitution. Where a definite article of the Constitution is specific, any subsequent law is inconsequential to the extent that is inconsistent to the Constitution. My problem is, even with this action on the judges, is the issue of the breach of the Constitution, because there was an existing court order. So how then do you violate that court order? How do you violate the Constitution when you deal with the media? If you look at the ICC situation, when we were here last week, I said again, we need to welcome the British position on video link. And what carried the day was video link, and actually the excusal that was sponsored by Greece and Guatemala. In essence, Sophie, the African sponsored motion failed on immunity. And it had the entire support of the whole Kenyan delegation, led by Honorable the Attorney General and the Secretary Amina Abdallah. But the bottom line is, it didn't even make it to the agenda.
We'll talk about that more. There's something very interesting you've said. I want to take you on, Tony, that for the president, for you, and most of the people who know him are shocked by his recent actions, that they feel that this is not in character, and that you think and are saying that it's people who could be pressuring him, his advisors. So then what are the people, the Kenyans, left two, if a president, you know, as you allude, out of his own person, and the power he's been given a mandate by the people of Kenya, is by the same people who are around him and meant to be advising him, being, as you say, misguided.
Actually,
can I add on to
because
that
I know
question?
Benji will jump into
add
it.
on,
Benji
let
will
him add on.
Okay.
I'd like to add on, just to spice up the debate a little bit, but also let me, you know, perhaps clarify for Sophia that actually this happens quite a bit in the management of power. Tony, just spice up the debate a bit. Do you suspect perhaps the hand of Kenya? These are people well known to you and I.
Actually, I see this more as the deputy president. I see the hand of the deputy president.
Exactly.
And the what you call this core principle, which began
with the Raila and
with Kibaki,
yeah.
where you came into power and somehow you're a ticket,
Exactly.
and you can't govern without each other.
Exactly.
Because clearly these matters were led through what you call the Rift Valley element within Jubilee, right from the parliament, where a resolution of this matter was passed. The chairman of the legal committee, Mr. Chepkonga, Honorable Chepkonga, you know, comes from that region and area, was very, very, very adamant about the Shole issue. And of course, if you remember, they summoned the Judicial Service Commission, who then said they were not going to Parliament.
Yes.
And then the president is saying that he's received a petition from Parliament. And therefore, on the basis of that petition, he has appointed a tribunal.
Yeah.
First of all, Sophie, this tribunal has no secretary. It has no CEO to hire offices or to be able to even hold these hearings. It was a rushed, you know, gazette notice.
Okay. So the office of the deputy president comes into sharp focus.
I am
on
saying
this
within us, a lot of people within Jubilee are very concerned.
Okay.
And in fact, many of us are thinking it's time to actually go and see the president and actually raise to him some issues which are happening now, which are a lot of concern. I read today in the newspapers that even Rift Valley MPs are complaining with the deputy president and his style of being abrasive and very strong and heavy-handed. So I've got a feeling, and I would like to caution this president, because Mwai Kibaki had these same problems, but eventually he had to change guard. If you remember, he had to let go of Chris Murungaro, Matere Kireri, Alfred Gitonga, Mweraria, and so many people who characterized the so-called DP face of the NAC government. And then he brought in Ambassador Mudaura, and some sobriety came back to government.
Benji, gentlemen, we're talking about just what we've been saying in terms of what's playing out with the JSC, also with the media bill, and ICC was also an interesting one last week. All eyes were at The Hague with the ASP. But I trust you me, I think very many Kenyans right now watching this are still very confused as to where we stand.
Absolutely.
Where are we?
On one of the issues, I want to encourage the president to understand that people make mistakes, even when you are carrying out executive duties. And many times you even change policy midstream. For example, the Obama administration and the UK had wanted to bomb Syria. And they were very clear about the use of chemical weapons, etc. But the local domestic situations and the global politics did not allow that decision to take place. So Obama went back to the table drawing board and came up with a new issue. I think that during the reign of President Kibaki, several times there were major policy changes. And I would urge the president, with regard to the issue of the judiciary, because Benji is coming into it, there's no compromise but to withdraw that special gazette notice and actually allow the Judicial Service Commission and judiciary to be independent and sort out their problem as guaranteed.
Because somebody, Tony, says here on Twitter, Musembi Mulunge Senior says, I agree with Tony Gachoka, but do not today because the court order was served to Parliament, not to the president.
That's a good comment, but actually I've spoken to a senior commissioner, and I can't, who among the suspended commissioners, and they have a court order that actually barred any action to be taken against the Judicial Service Commission until the case which is before the court is heard.
Any action by everybody? Was it
yes,
Parliament?
It was not. You know, in fact, you can't order the National Assembly.
Because they're the ones who are at the time.
Yes, I don't want to read the specific order, but I think it will come out in the course of this week that there is a specific order barring any action against those members of the Judicial Service Commission until the determination of the case. And that would include the president. Now, whether he was actually served on it on the order or not, it's in the interpretation of the Council for the Judicial Service Commission that there was a court order suspending everything. And unless you vacated that order, you would not be able to move. And I give the example of President Kibaki. When the issue of the Attorney General, the Chief Justice, and the DPP came up, there was an order not specific to the president, but against the process. And therefore, the president went contrary to that. And when the order was then issued, the president then reversed the decision and began the process.
Benji, let me bring you in because we need to talk also about the ICC quite a bit, because what happened in terms of even the headlines, you know, at 1 minute you're hearing celebration, yes, it's a big win for them. And then there's the fine print that maybe perhaps the judges still need to be the ones, it's up to them, the judges at the ICC, to decide on case by case whether they will be allowed to be or not to be present. So where are we now?
I know it's that one was a pretty complicated one, and just before we jump into that, let me just say that at any rate, just to advance Tony's argument, it is good, ideal leadership philosophy to, within democratic principles, avoid wading into a controversy already. Once there's a, you know, toss-up between one arm of government and the other, then it's obviously good principle for the president not to then be the one to hit the last nail on the coffin. And that's why I think, as Tony has alluded to, it's very important that the president not be captured. For those, you know, who know his character as more of maybe an amiable guy, an amicable guy that can, you know, lead without too much controversy, without too many demands. Perhaps my only question would be then, why wouldn't the likes of Tony Gachoka be supporting, you know, the president on a full-time basis? I mean, you have to perhaps ask who is really managing and advising running the country, so that you don't have these kinds of blunders early on, and to where they get to be systematic, you know, modus operandi, and then halfway down the line, the president really could have started to lose a lot of support. I'm not here to give him political strategy, but this is pretty much how Kibaki began in 2003, where after the violation of the MOU and all the clique capturing him and creating all these rifts, 2 years down the line, he was a pale shadow of his former self and couldn't win anything, which is how he lost early.
I actually want to ask a question.
2005, yes.
This rogue parliament, just want to agree with Benji, but just give you a live example. I came here and I said, we are dealing with the rogue Jubilee parliament. And people said, why is Tony attacking the parliament? I want to ask you a question. The motion by the African Union to have the immunity against sitting heads of state, okay, never saw it even to the agenda.
Of course it failed.
Okay, of the Assembly of State Parties. I said, support the British position for video link, and now Guatemala and Greece came with excusal. This is the hybrid that passed at the Assembly of State Parties. And today I am happy to see that the prosecutor, Barasuda, said that she's going to follow all the amendments that were passed and therefore comply with them. So there is no issue or fine print between the issue. The president will not attend The Hague. He will attend, if necessary, through video link, and otherwise he'll be excused from the trial. That even the prosecutor is not, she's not denying it. In fact, has gone into a press conference to confirm that the state party has or Rome statute has been amended.
Okay, but my so the president will not attend.
He will not attend the trial, and if necessary, he will attend it at the opening or closing, as his lawyers will argue in court through the video link, and he will therefore be excused from the thing. But the issue I'm making is this parliament had a motion against the United Kingdom government. Where is the motion? What happened to it? They were meant to censor. What I'm simply saying is that there seems to be lack of direction. I remember seeing Ndolo saying, we don't want video link, we don't want Britain. Where is Ndolo now? Why is he speaking? I came here and I told you these are rogue people. They don't speak for the president. Now the video link was adopted. And adopted by a delegation which was also headed by Kenya's AG and the
president must seek finesse.
You see what I'm saying?
The president must seek finesse.
Not speaking for the president, and yet they're seen as the people closest to the president. And then now the question of whether it's the deputy president's camp that, you know, is also working in its own direction.
But allow me to
clarify. Where does that leave Kenyans in terms of the leadership?
Allow me to clarify on this particular issue, Sophie, because a lot of the players in this thing are very well known to me. Article 27's amendment was the initial objective of this delegation to the Assembly of State Parties in The Hague. And so what this article sought to do was to insulate the president, all right, from any prosecution whatsoever. That was really the big win that they sought, and that failed. Having said that, let me just clarify slightly, a step further on what Tony is saying. Yes, for me, why the video link, I think why, I'm not going to explain this rogue parliament, but why I think they saw a pitfall is because the video link is a roundabout legal way of saying that you can try the president. So once that was accepted, then it has caveats. For example, at the beginning of trial, president would attend. During special witness testimony, he would also attend, during close of trial, and during sentencing. So that's not the same thing as walking away. And so that's why Amina's statement on this is a really big day, this is a big win, were curious at best.
Good, finally,
I'll allow you to come back. I'll allow you to respond. Finally, the Rome Statute is the essence of the laws along which the International Crimes Act has been crafted. And so the Rome Statute is the constitution, so to speak. And any amendments have to be extrapolated within the context of the Rome Statute. In other words, they have to be consistent. Otherwise, they would be, you would argue, almost unconstitutional. And so once again, the judges, and one of them has been very clear, just yesterday, one of the lady judges, and of course the prosecutor, that they don't want to introduce politics into the whole thing, even though the other side will argue that it's a political court, so to speak, will have to interpret those statements or those amendments on an ad hoc basis, on a case-by-case basis. I don't think we're really out of the woods
I
yet.
think I want to be very clear.
And the bottom line is that the trial continues.
Let me be very clear.
The trial continues. That's the bottom line.
There was that they initially sought the immunity of sitting heads of states.
Which
that
they
did not
get,
fly.
Could I? I'm going to talk about immunity, but first I have to correct something Benji has said. There's not going to be any issue of sentencing that the president would. The president is innocent. The president needs this trial.
We don't know.
But we don't know that.
This is
To be fair,
I think we're having a three-way discussion. I may be allowed to disagree with my friend Ndolo.
Exactly.
The issue of talking about sentences is to presume that there will be a guilty verdict. I just want to correct that point.
Oh, okay.
There may be an opening, there may be a closing, but there may be an acquittal. But I'm just being very
But the
clear.
sentencing is in the word.
I am being very clear so Kenyans can have both sides of the argument.
Correct.
And I'm saying that as far as I'm concerned, it's in the president's best interest to have this matter disposed of very quickly. One of the reasons I was against immunity personally, and I've been on record supporting the video link and so forth, is because the president is his own best witness. There are some things that only the president can say. There are things which are important for him to see during cross-examination, etc. But then he's not the likes of Mugabe. He's not the like of Abrashir. This immunity that was being pushed by the African Union puts all heads of state in the same league. That no sitting head of state can be brought before the ICC. They are not equal in character, or the charges before them, or the kind of things that would come in the future are not similar. So I had always wanted the case of Uhuru Kenyatta or the Kenya situation to be separate from a blanket immunity for all citizens of the state. The other issue that is very critical and very important is that you want to try him after he's president. The whole idea about the ICC politics had been that William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta stood and won elections because Kenyans felt that despite that they were indicted, the ICC question crippled the court campaign. So in my own view, it would be wrong for Jubilee to go for a rerun, a re-election, without having disposed of the ICC matter. In my view, it would be clever politics to deal with this matter once and for all, be acquitted and vindicated.
That means you disagree with the quest for a deferral.
Of course, completely. And
Tell them.
And I have said this very many times. I have been on record. I have supported the British position, and I said London came in at the right time to hold the hand of the president. I was saying that this parliament, when they were attacking the United Kingdom government, were being rogue, and they don't speak for the president because the president's lawyer has an application before the ICC for video link.
Additionally, to be overly defensive makes you look like you're scared of something, makes you look kind of guilty.
These are stories and developments we'll of course watch in coming days, but I want us to touch on a story that we saw unfold last week, the groundbreaking ceremony, Standard Gauge Railway and Mombasa. The president was there, the deputy president was there. There's a trade union that's contesting the award of the tender because now that has come into sharp focus, and the DP had written to the Attorney General seeking clarification on whether this was constitutional, and in fact in his advice he had said there are some questions to be raised in as far as this whole exercise was conducted. So the president being there to for the groundbreaking ceremony with issues that are still not very clean, not very clear, there's still questions, is it not worrying?
As someone who has worked within protocol, it's interesting to me that the president is, I'm looking for the word, not very cautious when it comes to some of these issues. You saw him in Machakos the other day, just a day after the cabinet secretary for national government had said that our land has been encroached on, this land must be returned, I have met with the governor, etc., etc. I really had thought that the president wouldn't risk any embarrassment, and now here they are launching the Standard Gauge Railway, even as letters are coming in protesting the same from his own deputy president. Here's the tragedy for me. As we all know as Kenyans, a lot of the money-eating culture is exemplified and takes root properly during procurement processes. And so it is unfortunate that we don't have yet a leadership in this country that queries projects for the betterment of society, for the good of the taxpayer. But usually when you see any opposition, it's because someone is not getting what they wanted to get. As you saw, even with this, there's allegations that cost has been doubled and tripled and what have you. And so you wonder when we shall turn the corner on eradicating institutional corruption to where projects are meant for the benefit of the taxpayer, for the benefit of the average Kenyan, at the best possible pay, and not as opportunities to build a slush fund, to build a war chest for the next campaign. And that's exactly what
Kamau has argued for government and said that it is not an open process, it was not open for tendering because of the laws of China, and so they were bound by that because of the government to government. But still,
I want to stand 100% behind the president on this project for the railway. I don't think you're going to please everybody in a democracy. And I don't think that...
Is it about pleasing people,
I want to be very clear.
By the
no,
law?
I just want to be very, very clear. I'm being very clear about this. I don't think any laws were broken because there is a protocol.
But the AG is raising concerns.
I have served in government, and this will not be the first government-to-government deal. Even during the elections, the BPR, the machines which were eventually controversial, was a government-to-government deal between Canada and Kenya. And there is precedent for government-to-government contracts. The issue of the railway is such an important economic development in this country that will affect lives and jobs and the prosperity of our people. It will be a major blow towards fighting, not as an asset in fighting poverty. And I would like to say there are more ticks than there are X's in this deal. Because first of all, the president had been to China and a protocol was entered between the government of China and the government of Kenya. Among that was infrastructure. It's not uncommon when these countries abroad give you support, financial support, that they wish one of their own companies to actually win the tender to do the job. That is normal even in the West. When you get money from the European Union or you get it from UK, etc. Now, I also wanted to talk about Alfred Mutua's project because I think it's one of the hardest. No, you made a comment here that the president puts himself in controversial positions, and I don't think so. Alfred Mutua's matter was very clear. Mutua even went to court against Senator Mudhama, got all the necessary orders that were in place before the president got there. And I think that he was supporting a accord area, which is not even Jubilee. It has nothing to do with Jubilee politics. He was being president of all of Kenya, and I think that should be commended. I would like to see this president being in other counties that are not Jubilee counties in order to be seen to be serving all Kenyans without any...
But mine was not in reference to that. It was simply in reference to the railway line, because it's as far as the law is concerned. Because when you have your own deputy president, because you're saying he's a person who cannot please everybody, but even his own deputy is having concerns. In writing.
Could I be very clear to you?
And the AG as well says,
could I be very clear about that? Do you know that there are serious wars on that issue? The deputy president's coordination function has been taken away. It's under Mr. Joseph Kenywa at the State House.
Chief of Staff.
Let me tell you this. The deputy president can only exercise power delegated to him by the president. He does not have any executive role.
But that does not answer the question.
I am being very clear because, you know, again, we must not misinform Kenyans. That the deputy president can summon the attorney general or write to him. He didn't summon,
he wrote
I am making a point to you that the deputy president can go and meet the president and raise an issue with the president. It's for the president to give the instructions to his chief of staff or the head of the civil service for matters within government to be handled this way. But what mischief would there be if you are being honest as the deputy president? And we've raised this issue at the beginning of the show. Why would you leak such a letter? If you've written a letter, or even if you've talked to the attorney general, and you know there are hotlines within government for government to government.
So are you saying the deputy president is being mischievous?
Yes, absolutely. Because why would that letter be in the media?
But Tony, allow me to point out...
Who's got more access to the president than Ruto?
Allow me to point out then that these would be the beginning of serious tensions within Jubilee and also some cracks, because he will feel disrespected. He will feel that a lot of his coordination functions are being taken away to State House. And as it is already, the reports that are out there in the media is that the Deputy President's office cannot even spend a shilling does not have its standalone budget without going in through State House. Now, this might be good for control of expenditure and what have you, but politically, it will be the beginning of serious
What I can assure you on this program is some of us who are in Jubilee and the friends of the president are going to sit back and allow just, for his administration to be destroyed, as we can see.
Yeah.
If you quite remember, even before we went into these elections, there were all these disputes as to whether Mudavadi is a candidate or President Kenyatta.
They even signed something.
And so on. There were all these issues, and we dealt and surmounted upon them. There were even people who were saying not another Kikuyu, and so on. So there have been many, wars that have been fought within Jubilee for this presidency to actually succeed. But there is definitely, Sophie, a crack within the Jubilee system of government. There is an incompetent Attorney General in office. Okay. And I want to underline,
I'm happy to hear you say that.
Absolutely incompetent. In fact, the best thing this president can do, all these matters we argue are all legal. So where is the Attorney General?
Sophia, allow me to state it on the record very clearly that when Aaron Ringera's reappointment, which was unconstitutional by President Kibaki, went to court, and I was one of the petitioners, the lawyer for the other side was then lawyer Githu Muigai, and we gave him a spanking within the law. Okay, like gentlemen, we have about 10 minutes to go.
But I also want us to touch on what we've seen unfold in terms of the by-elections. Campaigns ongoing, everybody ready to go for the by-election, Lunga Lunga and Lamu, and then Court of Appeal overturns, and 55 million shillings since its losses IBC has encountered. But what does that particular, overturning say to you?
To me, what it says, and I'll be very brief, and I mentioned this to Chief Justice on email, I think last week on Friday, that, because for me, I like to advise on practical matters. And I said the judiciary has its problems, but it has also really had a lot of changes. But it's curious, at the least, that many a time the courts issue contradictory opinions. I mean, you could get fired today and go and get... You had a lady at Kenyatta University, I think Professor Olive Mugenda, who had a court order barring her from doing something. Then she went round to another court, industrial court, got a contradictory order, then got another order after that order was overturned, and that, at the least, makes you wonder what kind of jurisprudence. We're not saying that all judges and courts should agree, but Tony, what does that say about the entire judiciary system when you can just go and keep getting contradictory orders after contradictory orders, and you wonder then what is I can assure you, if you even went, what is the actual spirit that's guiding their thinking?
I would actually urge, if we are asking the president to be cautious on his attack on the judiciary, I think we should also live by the same script. I believe in fidelity to the law and to the constitution, but the courts will make mistakes from time to time, or sometimes they will do things that we don't fully agree with. But the principle of respecting the institution of the judiciary should supersede our criticism of it, because this is a young reforming judiciary, and it's the anchor of our democracy. And where we find disputes, whether within politics, business, and otherwise, we'll have to rely on these courts. I'm telling you today, a judge is sitting down with a 2 billion shilling dispute between two companies, handling divorce cases, handling matters of probate and death, and so on, for estates, etc. So we want to give a message, at least from this morning show, that really, as a media and as a people, we need to give the judiciary time so that it can continue finishing the transformation. I understand what Benji has said, but I think they did so well with the petitions that none of those petitions brought about bloodshed. None of them, in fact, very few are appealed, and those that were appealed are the ones that have caused the problem. Many of the petitions stopped at the High Court, and the people accepted the ruling of the High Court. The appeal process itself is lengthy, because obviously there was a very short time between the election up to when these appeal courts had to do their job. Now, somebody has to work out that calendar and look at how we can make that better. Already the chairman of the IBC has spoken about it, that there is a need to look at that calendar better. So I would rather we have an improvement rather than a bashing of the judiciary. Let's respect the institution.
No doubt the judiciary has come from being a joke to being a hardworking body, again, as Tony says, that can sit, studiously within a very short period of time and, go through a whole vast number of cases. But the enemy enemy of good is better, the enemy of better is best. We can do so much better in really getting the guiding philosophy within the judiciary, the jurisprudence right, so that we don't have, we have an avoidance of the ridiculous, you know, where people don't just use the court as swim and the courts are not seen as flippant and reckless. That will really go a long way to inspiring more confidence.
And remember, Sophie, I speak as somebody, I think I'm the only Kenyan who has been jailed by 7 judges of the Court of Appeal for criminal libel. These matters which we are discussing now in the media, where a journalist can actually be criminalized for the job they do. In fact, what annoys me most about the memorandum rejecting, purportedly rejecting the media bill, was that it continued to increase the fine on media houses and also stayed with the fine on journalists. This is actually called criminal defamation. When you commit a defamatory act, the remedy is in libel or defamation. It's a civil matter that you go before a judge and you get an award. And even when you get an award, that award must be within reason. And that is why there was an outcry when Nicholas Biwott got the famous 30 million.
Who's the advisor on media there?
Absolutely, I think
you need to go and help.
Tony, Benji, TJRC report in Parliament for, you know, the discussions and recommendations.
And doctoring.
And that now is the concern, as you've put it, that it may be mutilated. Of course, you have some of these people mentioned adversely in this particular report. But for Kenyans, is there hope that...
As I've said many times, the caliber of this Parliament, you know, the level of commitment to good governance, the extent to which they do research. Just look at, I was reading an article yesterday on, for example, the clash at the ICC and the shock that the Kenyan delegation got from the civil society side because of the depth of research, because of the command on issues. I wish our parliament was a parliament that is composed of men and women who believe in something, who understand stuff, who have the passion, not just guys who are looking for sitting allowances to sit in committees and whatnot. Anything could happen with this TJRC report. Of course, very high place names themselves in the same report. So there will be the kind of influence that you can exert through the likes of Justin Muturi and what have you. I think change has not really come to this country yet, and it's unfortunate. Less than 2 weeks to the 50th celebrations that we, for example, you saw a show yesterday on the people that guard His Excellency the President and very, very high-ranking officials in this country, the squalor within which they live. I think, in a way, I'm sorry to say, we are a devious society.
I want to say that personally, the President has done a remarkable job in the last couple of months, particularly on the economic front, because Kenya is on the road to economic recovery.
I need your comment first.
I'm making my comment
TJRC.
On the TJRC. If I were the President, I would actually appoint an external judge to actually lead the process of implementation. Because the TJRC report is very contentious. It's got ethnic undertones. It's got historical injustices.
Even if your name is in the report?
What I would therefore ask for an independent, external judge. And that has been done before.
Even if your name was in it?
Parliament?
No. What I am, the point I'm making is that I would not want the report tampered with by politicians. What I would think, you would want an independent process. There is a way to do it. And actually, if you remember the Krieger Commission, which dealt with some very, very emotive matters, was one of the most successful commissions we've had, because we've had a history of commissions that don't work. But I'm talking about the implementation phase of what the TJRC report has had and the challenges. In my own view, an external judge within Africa or the region can actually be appointed so that you can disassociate some of the very emotive issues that are within that report.
We've begun a new week. Finally, in closing, what are we likely to see? Benji, less than a minute.
Less than a minute. We continue to, certainly we'll see a stalemate with the judiciary. There'll be a bit of reflections and further detail on what came out of the Assembly of State Parties. Sophia, I brought this for my closing comments. In 1999, I was involved in a huge debate with students in the United States about President Mugabe's attempt at kicking out the West and saying that Zimbabwe, can go without looking to the West anymore and whatnot. This, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know which camera.
Just hold it. The camera will find it. Hold it.
This is from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. $250 million bill. After this, they went to the US dollars. believe you me, this is the kind of thing we do not risk in our country. So this is not a joke. This is real, not to scare anybody, but the tone and the content and the debate that we've been having is really scary, because I don't believe that this country should just walk away from its traditional partners and insult them. And I think the president's speech was a mistake in declining imperialist powers, etc. I understand that we are Kenyans and we are sovereign and what have you, but this is what, Sophia, you cannot risk. This, as a young Kenyan, keeps me up at night, and I'm not even a leader. And this should scare anybody.
All right, thank you.
Well,
Finally, Tony.
I think that the president has grown politically. The chairmanship of the East African community is now another feather on his cap. Clearly, he is a leading voice in Africa. I think the compromise at the Assembly of State Parties was because Africa had made such a good showing at the United Nations Security Council that when they got 7 votes out of the required 9, the other with the West woke up. And you don't go to the West with a begging bowl, as we did under the years of Moi. You go to the West and say, Africa is rich, we have resources, we have capacity, we have trade. Do you want to work with us? And London's position by going to support an amendment for video link and a way out of the ICC quagmire shows that Kenya has grown economically and politically, and that the West is actually going to work with Kenya. The United States immediately issued a statement from Barack Obama through the UN secretary or ambassador of the US supporting what happened at the Assembly of State Parties. So I don't think it's all gloom and doom. The president has been able to achieve major successes internationally and economically with this transformation of the rail and Kenyan infrastructure. What we need to do is get some of the rogue people out of that State House and out of that Parliament, because some of them are misadvising him. And starting with the Attorney General, who is certainly not doing his work.
And mishandling him.
Gachoka, Benji, Ndolo, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you, Sophia, and have a good week.
Wish you a great week as well. See you next week.
Thanks, bro.
Salimie.
Oh, Asante. I wanted Tony's hand.
All right.